Well, thank you for joining us on this week's edition of Near and Rupar. I'm David Near, publisher of The Down Ballot. My co-host Aaron Rupar, publisher of Public Notice. And joining us today is a dear friend and a brilliant political operative, Joe Sudbay, who is host of the phenomenal State of the States program on SiriusXM Progress. If you want to know about what's going on in state politics, and in particular, if you want to find out about the amazing unheralded Democratic candidates who are running in all of these special elections and turning in incredible performances, odds are that you will hear Joe interview them before their election on State of the States. Joe, thank you so much for coming on Near and Rupar this week.
Well, first, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for that really lovely introduction. I'm so excited to be here, especially today, David, especially today.
I mean, there's really only one thing we could talk about, right? And it's obviously game one of the NBA Finals.
Oh, hey, I'm all primed for that. I watched it last night. So if you want to break down Halliburton's last shot or Rick Carlisle's, the coaching strategies, I'm a big NBA guy, so I'm happy to do that.
Well, here's the wild thing. On Twitter last night, there were two topics that were not trending. One of which was the NBA Finals, because it's featuring two very small market teams. And the other, boy, wouldn't you know it, the Trump-Musk feud was nowhere to be seen on the Twitter trending sidebar. Can you believe it?
Oh, is that true? Wow,
Yeah.
I missed that. Yeah, because I actually, I followed it during the day yesterday, and then I play in a Thursday night bocce league, which I have not been able to actually attend that often, but I made it last night. And pretty much everybody who knows what I do for work and whatnot, was asking kind of like, oh, how did you manage to get away? Isn't this like a crazy night for you? And I was kind of like, not really. I mean, these two guys are sniping at each other on social media. Like, what am I supposed to do about this? I mean, it's interesting, but it wasn't some sort of like 5-alarm situation for me or anything like that.
Oh, but I mean, it was entertaining as hell.
Yes.
Joe?
Oh, yeah, I have to say, I found it so entertaining and, not unexpected. Like, let's just admit, it
Yes.
was not unexpected, right? We knew it was coming. I was surprised at the ferocity and how quickly it turned into like literally a 5-alarm fire. I mean, Musk saying, you won because of me. You ingrate. Basically, you ingrate. And kind of sending the same message to the speaker, to Mike Johnson as well. I relished that. I mean, Musk invoking the Epstein files? That wasn't on my... I didn't expect that one, but there it was.
Yeah. Well, and let me just back up a step here, because just to explain kind of how this unfolded for me, because it might be of interest to people. I was watching the press availability that Trump had with the German Chancellor Merz yesterday in the Oval Office. And, as this got going, I mean, there were a number of reasons that was notable. You had, Trump kind of suggesting that Merz is like a Nazi sympathizer over the D-Day comments where he made, where he's like, isn't tomorrow a really dark day for you? And, Merz was like, no, actually, that was when we were liberated from Nazi dictatorship. So you had that. But then, he started as the event kept going. And I think he was maybe asked by a reporter, but, he started taking some shots at Musk. He had the comment about how like, oh, once we took out the EV mandate, because that hurts EVs, then he got mad at me. And then he had the comment about like, I even offered him makeup last Friday when he had his black eye. And I thought it was interesting that he didn't you take me up on that, which I posted.
I missed
these
that.
clips kind of got buried by everything that happened subsequently. But, I thought especially the makeup one, because Trump was almost kind of nodding that there was more to the story, than the cover story of Musk's 5-year-old son punching him, where he was kind of saying like, it's interesting that I didn't want makeup, like what was going on there. So I was watching this and kind of thinking like, oh man, when Elon sees some of these clips, he's not going to be happy about this. And before the event even ended, it's maybe like a 45-minute event. As soon as it wrapped up and I pulled up social media, Musk had already started in on his barrage of tweets, which started relatively anodyne. But then, Joe, as you mentioned, kind of escalated all the way to him dropping the bombshell that Trump is allegedly in the Epstein files. That was one, obviously, I think that most people, took note of. And, I guess my read on that is he's going to have some actual receipts. I don't think it's going to be enough to just to just say that, because, we've all seen the clips of Trump and Epstein partying, and, their relationship and friendship is not a secret going back to Trump's first term. So, it's one thing to kind of make that claim, but, and we'll see. And that could be something that Elon kind of dangled out there as almost like a threat. But that's I guess the other part of this that I'm a little unsure of is what exactly Musk wants at this point. Is he just kind of jilted over being, sort of shepherded out of the White House, before he wanted to leave? Or, does he really want the EV stuff to be reinserted into the reconciliation bill? To me, that part of it is still unclear, like what Elon's end game is with all of this.
Yeah, I wonder if Elon has an end game.
Yeah.
Maybe, based on the reporting we saw from the New York Times last week about, some of his intakes, let's just say. But it was.
Well, let's not be so subtle, because in case you missed that report, the New York Times reported that Musk travels everywhere with a large sack of drugs, including ketamine. Of course, Musk has denied this, but this is a reporting backed up by all kinds of sources.
Right. And he has traveled on some very important aircraft, including Air Force One. So there's that. But Aaron, I first got wind of this when I saw your clips. And when Trump said that Musk must have Trump derangement syndrome, I thought that was the first time I ever had. I was like, here we go. This could be fun today. And then it did roll into that. And, the other thing is, I thought there was another line he used, that he was sending a message to Republicans on Capitol Hill. Trump's going to be around for 3.5 years. I'm going to be around for 40. Factor that in. I mean, I'm adding that, factor that in. But that was, like, to me, him being very threatening, like, because he's been challenging these Republicans on Capitol Hill who voted for it, said you made a mistake, it's an abomination. And after that, we did start seeing some Republican members said, well, I didn't know what was in it. I mean, it's your one job. It's the one job you have, right? Know what you're voting on. I mean,
I think, Joe, you allude to something really important here, which is we're having so much fun watching this unfold, but there's a really important and serious dimension here. And there's absolutely a reason why Democrats should want this fight to continue and should do whatever they can to help keep instigating it. And that is, Musk did not go out and attack Trump. What he started with was attacking the bill. And it was Trump who responded in very personal terms, because that's the only way that Trump knows. It's not like Trump was going to go out there and defend a bill on the merits. He just went after Musk personally. And Musk's attacks on the bills make it harder for Republicans to pass this. And this is something Aaron and I we were discussing last week on the show, that, the House did get its act together, and Johnson managed to cobble together a bare majority with no margin for error. But now this whole Senate process has revealed many more fissures within the Republican Party. The bill is definitely going to change. It will almost certainly pass the Senate in some way or another, not least because Republicans absolutely are going to want to continue the Trump tax cuts from 2017. But the version that emerges is going to be something the House is going to have to swallow again. And it's not going to look like the sort of crazy creature that Johnson slapped together the last time. And, you were alluding to Marjorie Taylor Greene saying she didn't know what was in the bill that she voted for. And so the more that Musk forces Republicans to take a side, the harder it becomes for them to pass this abomination as is.
Yeah, I was just going to note, I mean, it's worth noting here that, Musk had been threatening to use his PAC to primary Republicans, both in the House and Senate, who had not been in step with Trump's agenda. But now, if you turn that threat into, I might primary you if you vote for this bill, that does add a very complicating kind of variable and some pressure on maybe some of these Republicans not to vote for it again, if it comes back before the House, or, there's still talk on the Senate side of breaking it up into multiple bills and, doing one right away that's more just like border focused and then coming back to the tax cuts later on. So, that is, I mean, I definitely think that the point that you kind of allude to, David, that this is good for the country and for our democracy, I think is very much on point, because, this was kind of a dark alliance when you combine the money that Musk has with, kind of the cult-like appeal of Trump, and Musk, of course, having X, and, the pressure that he can exert there and the influence that he has, that kind of breaking apart at the seams, I think really kind of weakens what had seemed like a pretty unholy coalition over the past year or so.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think what's interesting too is, and I go back to what happened in Wisconsin, when Musk became the factor in a statewide election, not a primary, a statewide election, ostensibly the Democrat, won by a huge margin. His power is in the primaries, but that's where Trump's power, but Trump's not going to be on the ballot. And I think there's one thing we've seen repeatedly, and that some of these Republicans know this. Trump's candidates always haven't won. When Trump's not on the ballot, it's a different story, but Musk's money will be there. So it adds that dimension that, because look, there's nothing more important than to all 535 of them than winning re-election. And the 435 in the House are all up. 215 of them voted for this bill. They own it. And Musk is now telling them, you made a huge mistake. And now they're going to have to do some navigating. And that was why I thought Trump will be around for 3.5 years. I'll be around for 40. And it was like him saying, you have to deal with me. And it was basically a threat after reminding them that they have the House because of him.
So just a reminder to folks, if you're a paid subscriber either to the Down Ballot or to Public Notice, you can participate in our Q&A with some very funny Starkey remarks so far. I've seen some popcorn emojis. Eric O said that being in the Epstein files is going to turn into a MAGA badge of honor. And you could almost believe it.
Yeah.
And then my buddy and collaborator, Quinn Yeargain, he said he wants to see the Down Ballot merch. This was a gift for my birthday from my girlfriend, but we will be opening up a swag shop. Aaron, you should sell swag too.
Boy, I'm just trying to get paid subscribers at this point. I mean, at some point. But actually, your logo lends itself well to that, and I think it would look pretty slick on a T-shirt too.
Hell yeah.
I just want to say,
please.
Paid subscriber to both from early on, and I every morning I value reading both of your work and your colleagues as well. It's essential reading.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Joe. I wanted to jump in with a further thought on Musk here, and God, blue sky was almost too much fun yesterday. I had to catch my breath and refocus on work. And so I can't remember exactly who said what, because there were so many hilarious observations and also really insightful observations. And one of the really insightful points I saw was that Musk's power, his unbelievable wealth, protects him and gives him power in a liberal society. In an illiberal society, it doesn't insulate him at all, because Trump was immediately threatening him with, yanking all kinds of contracts that Musk is hugely dependent on, government contracts. And, in a normal, healthy, functioning society, you wouldn't have a president who would make threats like that. But Trump is anything but normal, healthy, and functioning. And so Musk is, in putting himself in jeopardy, and his companies and his shareholders in jeopardy. And I get the sense that the boards of his various companies are very supine and anything but independent. But if they were even a little bit independent, they'd be looking at this. I mean, Tesla stock is back up a bit today, but it cratered yesterday. He's putting lots of people's wealth in jeopardy by doing this, and who the hell knows what else, right? I mean, God, man, I saw memes that are super funny. I almost don't even want to mention them, involving Putin. I mean, Trump is not that different from Putin, and we know what Putin's capable of.
Right.
Yeah, that is kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, I saw some chatter making that similar point in the context of the scandal affecting the DeSantis's down in Florida, where there's some thought that possibly, there could be an indictment there, but then, of course, Trump, might protect them. But if he had a reason at some point not to protect them, or if he turned on DeSantis come decisively, I mean, that is, kind of when the rule of law becomes eroded, I mean, that can be protection for Trump's allies insofar as they remain his allies. But then, when that changes, then that can be a weapon used against you. So it kind of cuts both ways. And I do think that is applicable in the context of Elon Musk as well. And the other thing I would just note that I thought was interesting is Eli Crane, the representative from Arizona, was on with Benny Johnson today. I posted this clip, but he said something to the effect of, we should all be praying for reconciliation and unity between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And he was earnestly saying this, where he's like distraught almost. And, you saw some of this wish casting on Fox this morning as well, where like there was a news cycle briefly this morning where I'm not exactly sure where it came from, but there was talk that there was going to be a phone call between Musk and Trump and that they were going to basically patch it up. And then, I mean, I hate that we're back in this world, of Trump, which we saw in the first term as well, where you kind of have like the hot gossip, where I believe it was Dana Bash from CNN who got Trump on the phone today. And he had some quote along the lines of, I'm not even thinking about Elon right now. That guy has a problem, and I don't know if he was alluding, it was unclear based on the quote, whether he was alluding to like a drug problem or like a political problem or what exactly the problem was or some combination of both. But yeah, there's kind of this hope, I think, among Republicans that these two guys can patch it up for reasons that we touched upon earlier, because they're a very powerful team, when they combine forces. But it seems like there's, some personal hard feelings, even if, I even went to the extent now of setting alerts for Elon, to see what the next shoe that drops when that happens. But, it seems like he's kind of tweeting about other things today. And, it's kind of,
oh no, he's back on it. He's back.
Is he back on it? Okay.
Yeah.
I may have missed some posts then.
Well, it's in the replies, a lot of it.
Okay.
But yeah, he has been, they're tweets that are taking Musk's side, and he is like, yeah, right on, brother.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I had been getting worried too that, this magical gift was going to go away. But I think we still have it for a little while longer. Joe, I want to ask you about one name that we haven't mentioned, who is absolutely caught in the middle of all this. JD Vance. I mean, the guy is the most terminally online fucker that there is. And he basically went to ground yesterday. I mean, he eventually surfaced with some like really anodyne tweets that were like not the kind of thing that Trump expects from his loyalists. So like,
yes.
What do you think's going to happen here, Joe, with JD?
Well, yesterday there was the New York Times was doing live coverage of this, right?
Yes.
Which, like that just shows you what we're up. Wall Street Journal was like, it was what's happened next. And there was a line from Maggie Haberman who said that Team Trump is going to make people choose sides.
Yes.
You have to decide which side you're on, which to me is like basically Team Trump sending that message out through one of their spokespeople.
Yeah. Right.
but
who he doesn't even have to pay.
Right. And so I was thinking, who's that aimed at? Now, I suspected one of them was JD Vance. JD wants, JD's thinking about his future. JD is one of those people who knows Trump's around for 3.5 years, but he wants to be the heir apparent. But he's also so plugged into that kind of world through Thiel and others and that billionaire world, and he's a wannabe one of them. So I think it creates problems, real problems for him. And the fact that he's anodyne today and not like cheerleading for Trump, I think is a real
knifing Musk. He's not knifing Musk.
Yeah, which is what you're supposed to be doing right now.
Right.
And you know who has really resurfaced and is becoming vindicated is Bannon. Bannon always hated Musk. I mean, Bannon has plans for Musk that are like really dire. Like he wants to denaturalize him and send him out of the country. Like, and he means it. And the other person who is an interesting factor is Stephen Miller. And not because of Katie, we can get to that. But in 2022, Stephen Miller ran Citizens for Sanity super PAC. And at the time, we were monitoring it pretty closely. We're like, where the hell is he getting his money? Because it was about $250 million. And we'd only found out last fall that it came from Musk. So there's there's an intense relationship there. And then, of course, there's Katie Miller, who
bring folks up to speed on that in case folks have missed this part of the gossip train.
Yeah, this is it. So okay, well, let's go back to February when Wired ran an article, and Jake LaHut. It was one of those articles that by the time you got to the end of it, you're like, what did I just read? And it was talking about the very close relationship that existed between Musk and the Millers, and they quoted some anonymous White House staffers who are like, I do not want to know about their private lives. I don't want to know what Stephen Miller. So you could only come away with, you came away from it thinking, this sounds like a very interesting three-way relationship. And like, I am not that's really what you came across away from it. And those, like, it didn't say it outright, but by the end of it, you're like, you wanted to poke your eyes out. So Katie Miller, Stephen Miller's wife, which is amazing that he has one. That's another story. She worked for Musk. Now, she actually, we're finding out she actually just worked for Musk. She was a special government employee, but she was actually paid by Musk. And when it was announced he was leaving, it was announced that Katie Miller was going with him, which set off a lot of speculation in light of the aforementioned Wired article. And I might have partaken in that because I do think Stephen Miller is one of the most evil human beings that exists. But it's really weird because, and that's one of the other people, like, where does Katie Miller go? Her new boss is in direct conflict. Like, Stephen Miller is fighting with Musk on Twitter as well, in veiled ways. But I find that dynamic fascinating because Miller, to me, is the one who's running the White House right now.
Yeah.
He really is. Trump always says, well, I don't know about that. You'd have to ask someone else. Miller tells the Department of Justice what to do. He certainly has Kristi Noem working for him. She does photo ops. He does all the policy. And I think he tells Rubio what to do. So all of a sudden, that's an interesting dynamic. And I want to see I do want to see how it plays out. And yes, I am a little gossip monger on this, but I think it's worth it.
Well, I wondered what it meant with the reporting where the reporting was basically that she was leaving to work with Musk. Like, does that mean she's relocating, or was that just, she's staying in DC? I mean, again, I don't want to turn this into, Teen Bop or something here, but I do feel like normally, this sort of gossip about people's private lives would be very unseemly and kind of like inappropriate. But because, Joe, for kind of the reasons you mentioned, that Stephen Miller is almost universally regarded as being so loathsome, it's like you kind of get dispensation to kind of weigh in here and gossip. But, the reporting on that was vague enough where it left a lot of questions, and it left me wondering, because they have like 3 kids who are like under 5 years old. So like, I have 2 kids who are very young like that. Like, how can you raise your kids if you're moving like that? But maybe sometime we probably will find out answers at some point, I'm guessing.
I want to say something real quick about that, and Joe, I'll turn it back over to you. But these people, this Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, they have all blurred every possible boundary. Forget about just blurred, crossed, broken, etc. And they see no distinction between themselves and government, public life, and public money. And so it's only natural that their personal and private lives are also going to get exposed in the same way, because they also don't have boundaries, especially with Elon allegedly doing all of these drugs. So yeah, I think there's the Stephen Miller dispensation because that guy can burn in hell. But, they have made themselves this cult of personality. And when that happens, then necessarily your entire life is going to be open to scrutiny. Joe, please.
Well, no, and I feel the way I feel about this is I don't care what people do in their private lives. I mean, as long as it's safe and legal and consenting. But this particular crowd has made a big issue of my personal life. They want to take my rights away. They want to end my marriage. They mean it. I walked down to DuPont Circle today and saw them putting wire caging around DuPont Circle because it's World Pride Weekend. They go after other people's lives. And I think in doing so, they make their hypocrisy and what they're doing fair game. And they've chosen to try and control the lives of so many of us. And, they act very sanctimonious, but they are not. And, certainly Trump is, for Christ's sake.
And Joe, I just want to jump in real quick, Aaron.
Okay, sure.
For those who may not be familiar with DC neighborhoods, DuPont Circle is the heart of gay history and gay culture and gay community in Washington, D.C. And it seems like the city government is also going along with this here. But the Trump administration very much wants to shut down the beating heart of gay life in D.C. during Pride Month, just like this bullshit they pulled with renaming the naval ship Harvey Milk, also reportedly deliberately during Pride Month on purpose. Aaron, please, I know I jumped in, but I had...
No, that was exactly, I was going to ask right along those lines because, obviously I still have friends in DC. We still have a condo there with renters. So, I'm keeping tabs on what's going on there. And I did see some of the, just kind of anecdotal reporting about what was going on surrounding Pride. So, Joe, is it the case that with DuPont Circle, they're kind of restricting access to the actual circle itself to, limit the Pride celebrations? Is that what's going on there?
Yeah, so this weekend is World Pride. World Pride, it's DC Pride, but it's also World Pride. So there's events all over the city. It's amazing. There are, just anything, you name it, there's something to do. There's seminars, there's drag shows, there's parties, there's concerts. There's going to be a big concert down at RFK this week, today and tomorrow. But interestingly, none of it was in DuPont Circle. None of it was in DuPont Circle. So the other day we saw reports that the Park Service, because the Park Service controls DuPont Circle, federal government has a lot of properties in D.C. So there was a report that they were shutting down DuPont Circle this weekend, World Pride weekend. And their initial report was that DC Metropolitan Police had asked because they didn't want problems in the circle, which there aren't problems in the circle, but that's another story. So there was a lot of backlash to that, and a lot of backlash towards Mayor Bowser, who's going to march in the Pride Parade on Sunday, or Saturday, whatever it is. And all of a sudden, the DC police said, "Oh, no, we don't mean it." But then the Park Service decided, "Oh, yeah, we're going to do it anyways." So there is no DC reason for it. So, literally what they're doing, Aaron, is that kind of fencing that's around the White House. So when you go to events, remember whenever there's an event at the Capitol, like State of the Union, they put that kind of 6 or 8 foot tall mesh fence, really closely dark mesh fence. They're putting it around the entire circle. I went down today, walked down with my dog Oliver, and there were about 15 police cars. There were guys in there, they looked like some of the ICE guys you see. They had the green on, like they were stormtroopers or something.
Fatigues,
walking around. It was insane. And the other thing, they blocked off the lane. So DuPont Circle it's always hard to navigate it, but there are 4 lanes. They blocked off 2 of the lanes. So when I was standing there, an ambulance was trying to come through that couldn't even get through because these guys were all standing there putting up fence. And I was like, for what? For what? What are you protecting us from? But I will say one thing that was interesting about it. It caused conversation. I was there for about 5 or 10 minutes. People just wanted to talk. They were so furious because I feel like it's seeing a manifestation of the police state there. So it's probably the same thing people are seeing when they see ICE agents and stuff. You just feel it viscerally, this is messed up.
Was there even a pretextual reason for any of that? It seems like that's, I guess it's one thing if they're citing some sort of public safety threat or something like that, but which would still be kind of hard to swallow. But, it seems pretty overt, what they're trying to do there.
Yeah. There's the line about we want to, protect it and blah, blah, blah. But come on. I mean, it's DuPont Circle. But again, what's interesting is it's clearly a symbolic thing because none of the events are in DuPont Circle. So it's just this is the Trump and I'd like to know at what level of the Trump administration this decision was made, because clearly somebody thought, "Oh, we're going to really show those queers we're in charge."
And they targeted the wrong spot.
Yeah.
I mean, that is
What are the feelings that people have about Mayor Bowser? Because, I asked, she was at the White House. This was maybe a month ago for an event with Trump. I believe it had to do with the RFK Stadium moving back into D.C. I posted a clip and, my mentions kind of turned into a battle because, on one hand, you had people who were kind of disappointed that she would, do a photo op with Trump and kind of be photographed with him and things like that. But then, you had people mostly DC based who were kind of pointing out that, she's in kind of a uniquely terrible position where, that DC is obviously very reliant on the federal government. And if that relationship went south, that could really be a bad thing. So, it seems like this dispute surrounding Pride or, what the federal government's trying to do is kind of another manifestation of that. But, what's kind of your sense on the ground? Are people kind of giving her some grace here or, are they getting frustrated that she's not doing more to push back?
Well, I think, this is a uniquely situated city, right? I mean, and we are dependent on the federal government. And I think people are willing to give her grace to a point. This week I saw reports that she may try and undo the city's law that prevents local law enforcement from working with federal agents on immigration deportations. And there will be a real backlash to that, because I think people will give her up to a point, but if she starts pushing that, but she's also, one of the things I rant about on my show, and I talk about it this weekend actually on State of the States, is this effort by Republicans to undo the will of the people who pass ballot measures. And she's trying to undo a ballot measure. I think it was for tipped wages, increasing minimum wage on tipped wages. But she's done this before, where she actually, the voters will pass something and she will go to city council and try and get it undone. So there is that piece of her that is very frustrating, in addition to what she's doing, and trying to, and look, you have to, it's in DC, you really have to figure out a way to work with the federal government. And Trump, she hasn't gone Gretchen Whitmer yet, but it's sometimes I feel like we have to really keep an eye on it. And I think the city council will keep an eye on it, because this thing with the blocking off DuPont Circle really pissed off a lot of councilors.
Well, we have more than 1,000 people tuned in today to Near and Rupar. I'm David Near, publisher of The Down Ballot, with my co-host Aaron Rupar, publisher of Public Notice. Our guest today, Joe Sudbay, host of the phenomenal radio program on Sirius XM Progress called State of the States. Joe, what channel is Sirius XM Progress?
It's channel 127. And David, this week I've been guest hosting for Dino Badala. His show 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern. And I will tell you, the phones have been off the hook. And last night, it was such a gift to be talking to the SiriusXM audience. It's a lot of like the folks who are tuning in today, funny, have great commentary. It was joy last night for about an hour and a half, just taking calls.
That's phenomenal. And what day and time does your show air?
State of the States airs, the first airing is on Saturday at 9 a.m. Eastern, and then it repeats several times over the weekend. And then it's available on demand too. And I really love doing that show. It is just, I really do love it.
I was going to mention that. I was on a Sirius, their Canadian politics show today, and they asked me to do this earlier in the week, and so many things happened in between when I was asked and this morning at 9:30 my time when I went on that I was bringing my kid to daycare when the call came in, and I immediately had that kind of, oh shit, I'm supposed to do a radio hit. So I did the radio hit. But it was like a 15-minute hit. And so I had to drive kind of a long way to daycare. And then my son, who's just turned 3, in the back, started chirping, "Daddy, where are we going? Why are you driving around?" So if you happen to be listening to the Canadian politics talk show, and I was on, and you heard some chirping in the background, I was kind of with my hand, gesturing to him. I was able to, get him to kind of calm down a little bit, but not my most ideal setting for a radio hit, but we got through it, and I think it went fine.
Aaron, I have to ask, why? Please tell me you were telling the Canadians about U.S. politics.
Yes. No, they wanted to talk about the Musk Trump stuff. I was kind of, they brought me on, which is fair enough under the, that I have some expertise, because obviously I was banned by Musk, and he's obviously a person who's been on my radar for years now, and so they were just kind of looking for the the American take on all of that, which is obviously of interest to Canadians as well. And, another side note here, I'm going to the baseball game here locally in Minneapolis, and they're playing the Toronto Blue Jays. And typically when the Blue Jays come to town, it's usually on a weekend, and like we get, like half of the stadium is filled up with Blue Jays fans, because there are actually some Canadian tour groups that sell packages. And, the Blue Jays aren't just Toronto's team, they're kind of all of Canada's team. And, we're just below Manitoba, part of Quebec. So we get them coming down. So I'm very interested to see, with everything that Trump is doing to kind of blow up that relationship, if things are a little bit different this year. So, next week on the show, I'll report back with, if Trump's policies have an impact at the ballpark, and just seeing fewer Blue Jays hats and, in the groups that typically are there to cheer on the Canadian team.
Joe, I wanted to ask you about something else. Oh, but no, please jump in.
No, go ahead.
So each week, Aaron and I discuss a possible theme for the show, and we try to come up with a title for the episode. And the Trump-Musk stuff was just starting to unfold. I wasn't fully tuned into it. And so I suggested to Aaron that we should call this episode the GOP War on Pride. And Aaron was like, dude, but like Trump and Musk, come on. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, right. No, we'll talk about that, and we'll make that the centerpiece. And Aaron had this brilliant title for the episode, but I wanted to explain it because we were like, is that a little too insidery? And I'm like, it might be, but it's super funny. So rapid unscheduled disassembly is this term that like almost Orwellian, but too comical to call it that, that Musk likes to use to describe whenever one of his SpaceX rockets blows up. Which, it's a term that gets used a lot these days. And so I totally love that this is the rapid unscheduled disassembly of the Trump Musk relationship. I hadn't actually really seen anyone else use that. I see big, beautiful breakup. But I thought that was really brilliant, Aaron. But Joe, the war on pride is very much a real thing. And I referenced it briefly earlier, but this business with renaming the Navy ships, one of those things that just like hits something deep inside. So why don't you bring people up to speed on what it is they're doing with that? Because it's just so appalling.
Yeah, so one of the ships was named for Harvey Milk, who is a legend in LGBTQ history. He helped redefine the political movement, built on what was started at Stonewall by the trans woman who started the riot there. Like, we must always remember, Pride started as a riot. And Harvey Milk was just an icon. He was murdered in 1978. So he served in the Navy. There's a ship named after him. And Hegseth decided he's going to rename it. And they admit that it was done in a petty way. Like, they were doing it to be petty, to be dicks. And it really, and the thing is, my friend Mike Signorelli, who I think both of you know, have been on his show, wrote a beautiful piece about it this week. Edmund White, a prolific gay writer, passed away this week too. And Mike said, and Mike and I have been chatting too, like, what would Harvey Milk would not care about the name being taken away as much as he would use it as an opportunity to organize and fight back. And that's the message we have to take. They're coming after us. I remember in 2016, the New York Times ran an article that gays, Trump's more accepting views on gays set him apart. My head almost exploded at the time. Maggie Haberman wrote it, of course. And we have proven it wrong and wrong again. And this community, particularly the trans community, has been so under assault by this administration in every way, shape, or form. There are reports that the FBI is actually going to start monitoring trans health care. This is a community that's under attack. This is a community that's been under attack before. We had a president who let hundreds of thousands of people die back in the 80s and didn't care. This is a community that knows how to fight and survive. And I feel like what they did with, it's like, they think like these things like they're really getting us. They're going to change the name of Harvey Milk ship and they're going to put a fence around DuPont Circle. It's like, you can't hurt us. And we know how to fight harder, and we will, and we've been around longer, and you're not going to, it's just not going to work. It's just going to piss people off more, and people are going to become more engaged. And I'll tell you, you mess with the queers, you pay a price in the end. And
you get the stiletto?
Well, that's how I've always felt about drag queens.
Right?
When this thing started, the war on drag queens started, I thought the one group in the world you do not want to mess with is drag queens. And they have been leaders for the movement. They will continue to be. And if you can do what they do, you have no fear. So, and they will be leaders of our community in the fight back. And we are going to fight back. And, we're not going to take their shit. We're just not going to.
Joe, let me ask you one more DC related topic, because I tuned into Fox and Friends this morning, as I'm wont to do, and they are in earnest now hyping the military parade, which is a week from tomorrow in DC. So are there any visible signs of the planning of that at this point? And I'm planning to watch it, but I still don't really know what to expect. So I'm just wondering what you're hearing down on the ground there about that.
Well, first of all, right now there's a veterans United for Veterans protest going on, which I think which I think is more important. But what most people in DC are worried about, and I'm not kidding. Most people are worried about, will the bridges be able to hold all the military equipment, and will Constitution Avenue be able to? Because Constitution Avenue, there's like a canal underneath it. So that's more what I've been seeing, Aaron,
Oh
is
my.
like, is the infrastructure going to hold? And they're going to have to put special plates down to make sure the tanks don't crash the streets. So, like, I don't think anyone, like most people from DC won't go. They just won't go. They
Yeah,
want
of
nothing
course
to do
not.
with
Yeah.
it. And I feel like if anyone's watching, they're going to be watching to see if Constitution Avenue survives.
So we're definitely not rooting for tanks to sink into the canal below Constitution Avenue, everybody.
Right.
Well, I did see the estimate that it's like in the tens of millions of damage that they're already kind of like budgeting in, to account for the damage that these tanks and whatnot will do. So, that's as they're trying to cut out waste and fraud. We have that to look forward to.
And cutting veterans' health care. Spend the money on that.
I mean, it really is just quite the contrast of the drag queens getting ready for Pride and Trump wanting to send the tanks down for his military parade. I mean, that just really is so remarkable. And, Joe, you make such a good point about what Harvey Milk would say, because, I read that news and I just felt so disgusted, and I imagine them like, what if they did that to a Jew, for instance? I'm Jewish, and, I just really felt it so viscerally. But at the same time, you kind of brought me back and you're like, it's not like Joe Subway woke up and said, damn, they renamed the USS Harvey Milk. I guess I'm not going to be gay anymore. I mean, like, the fight is still very much on, and it's only got to make people madder and madder.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I feel. And I was thinking, what would Harvey Milk do? Harvey Milk would say, strengthen your resolve and keep fighting. Come out, make sure your friends are out, bring more allies, and let's keep up this fight because we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere, and they're not going to make us go anywhere. They're not going to make anyone, the LGBTQ plus community. We're united, and we're not taking their shit.
Well, I can't think of a better note to wrap up on. We've been talking with Joe Sudbay, the host of State of the States on Sirius XM Progress. That's channel 127. Comes out every weekend. First airing is at 9 a.m. Eastern, but it airs throughout the weekend on repeat. You can also find it on demand online. Joe, before we wrap up, where can folks follow you online?
I'm on Blue Sky, Joe Sudbay, Sudbay. I have a Substack that I've written on some Substacks, but I got to start writing more because I have a lot of things I need to say. Obviously, you heard me today.
Joe, we look forward to your Substack cranking up. If you are a subscriber to the Down Ballot and you have not yet become a subscriber to Public Notice, I highly recommend that you do. Aaron hires some of the most talented writers to really shed light on the news of the day, the important stories that are not just news of the day, but the important stories with sort of long through lines and really giving you the kind of insights that the traditional legacy media refuses to acknowledge. I would say Aaron's stable of writers, they're almost like the anti-Maggie Habermans. They are they are dedicated to telling you the truth. And the truth, as Stephen Colbert says, has a liberal bias, and that's just the reality that we live in. If telling the truth gets you branded as a liberal or a partisan, well, that's just the world that we're in, and that doesn't mean that you should stop telling the truth. Also, if you're a Public Notice subscriber and you're interested in elections, especially all of the thousands of elections below the presidency, then you definitely want to subscribe to my newsletter, The Down Ballot. That's the-downballot.com. Public Notice, that's publicnotice.co. And of course, if you Google them, you'll find them. You can also find them in the Substack app. Nir and Rupar, our weekly show. We go live at 2 p.m. Eastern every Friday. And we will be back next week with another new show. And Aaron, is there anything else that you wanted to hit before we sign off?
No, I just want to say, I mean, the Down Ballot is so fantastic that I was hoping we might have time to get into the, Joni Ernst in Iowa and her challenger. And speaking of popcorn and enjoying people's downfalls, seeing Cornyn in Texas, kind of getting smacked around by Paxton would have been fun. But if you want to read more about those stories, check out the Down Ballot. And Joe, really great connecting with you. I hope sometime down the line we have a chance to bring you back on, because you're a joy to talk to. And I hope that despite the federal government's best efforts, that you have a good Pride this weekend and are able to celebrate.
I absolutely will. Thank you so much. What a treat this was. It's really an honor to spend some time with you, too. I revere your work, and I really, really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. And thank you to all of our viewers. We had 1,300 folks tune in, which is absolutely awesome. Everyone, enjoy the weekend. Have a fantastic Pride Month, World Pride, and break out the popcorn, because this story ain't over yet. Have a wonderful
I had my phone muted. I'm interested to see what posts we missed while we were on this. So thanks to everyone. We'll see you next week.
Happy Pride.